Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Ask me almost anything. My name is Glenn Gers. I am writing for screens. Today I am just answering questions about writing for screens. I am here pretty much every Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time live, answering questions and working on a pilot script to show you my process. At the same time, I'm trying to demystify the whole business of making scripts. Today we're just going to do ask me whatever you want. If you are watching this not live, if you are live but I am not, and you still want to ask me a question, feel free to go to writingforscreens.com. That is my website. And you can contact me by clicking on Contact Me. It's on just about every page. And for some reason, if you don't want to go to my website, it's okay. You can still comment or question right here in YouTube. Just type a comment into the questions. Type a comment into the question section. Type a question into the comment section. And with that, hello 99 Precinct. We are going to get right into some of our Ask Me Almost Anythings that have piled up in the past couple of weeks. We're going to get to the backstory one that is in the title here. But first, hello Ali Musanef. Please forgive me if I have not pronounced your names right. Good to see you. Great to have new viewers, new live folks being live with me. What I'm going to do today is I've got a pile of questions that people have asked me over the course of the past week or so, and also, of course, your live questions, you live people. But right now, I had a question from Leandro C., which was, how do you format the sound in a screenplay? And that's actually a fine question that I am happy to answer. First of all, there ain't no single way or any rules. Hello, Frank. Thank you so much. I enjoy doing it, especially if you guys are enjoying it. If you guys are not enjoying it, my enjoyment goes way down. And my reason to do it, way down. Okay, so formatting sound. Big point. There ain't no specific rule. There is no single authorized proper way to format sound. In fact, screenplay format is relatively simple. I did a whole video on it called Screenplay Format Made Easy. But let me show you some ways to do this. The first way, and in many ways the best way, is simply to put it into the experience of a character. Joe listens to the sound of thunder far away. So many ways that you could do it. Mary is distracted by the rumble of a subway under their feet. These are all good ways to do it, but they're not the only ways. Let's talk about some other ways. Another way you can do it is simply to write the sound. For instance, clicking, quiet, echoing, the sound of an annoying writer typing. That's another way to do it. Also, here, let's just separate these. Another way is you can do, sometimes I will put it into like Murray and Hannah are washing the dishes. Thunder outside. Frightening. Frightening. That's not spelled right. Like doom. And I'll just put it in okay, so what I'll do is I will put it in italics just to give a sense that it's off screen, that it's different, something like that. There's no real. So these are three different ways that you can get sound into the script. And the main thing is you don't want to stop the action. You want to try and put it into the experience of either the perceptions of the characters or the perceptions of the reader who is imagining the scene. The thing you do not want to do is this. Sound FX thunder. That is so annoying. That is in a way, it's even presumptuous because you are assuming that somebody is going to be in production and they're going to need to highlight this and call the sound department and stuff. When somebody, okay, let's get out of this for a second. When people are reading your script at the stage that all of you are at, if you're not in production, if someone has not greenlit this script and is preparing the departments and everyone's on the payroll, they want a reading experience. They do not want the details of production and camera work and editing stated in the script. First of all, it is not your job. You, as a writer, are not here to direct the movie. You are not here to do the sound design. You are not there to tell the DP how to shoot it. You are there to create an imaginary world which they will figure out how to make in their ways, because they are artists bringing their gifts to your imagined world. So your job is to make it feel like it's happening in the imaginary world of this fiction that you are putting on the page. And you can do it any one of these ways, but if you do it this way, you're saying, hold on, I need to tell people what to do in their departments. Hey, there's just no excuse for this. Don't do it. That's my final word on formatting sound. So that's one, Leandro. I hope I will make a note in your comment to tell you. But that's the one I got for the first one. Hey, Jack90, how are you? The next question is from Emma Sky. And in the comments, Emma asked, hold on. She's talking about a script she's writing in which there are two species and there are various characters. And she asks, how would I show each character's pass without blatantly saying it out loud? There's some specifics I want to put in, but I don't know how to show it because the main character wasn't on their side yet and would have no way of knowing any of this about them. So this is a good question. Here's the deal about backstory. First of all, backstory is different than the way you imagine it when you are planning out things like if you are laying out these backstories as if the backstory defines the character. Backstory does not define your character. Your character is defined by what they are doing in the story. Story, not backstory. The backstory only matters to the extent that it illuminates the action in the present. If you were to say this person is behaving this way because they were raised as an orphan or because they were raised underwater or whatever it is, or they had a traumatic experience where they met a person with a mop and now they're afraid of mops, cool, that's okay. But the important thing is, how does that show itself in the present story, in the present moment? If there are no mops in your story, then the fact that they were once scared by a mop probably doesn't matter enough to get into the story. So therefore, the first thing you want to do is see how your backstory relates to your story. There is a tendency for a lot of screenwriting teachers and also game uh, game designers. If you're learning from D&D or from games, there's a sense that you create a backstory because that creates the type of person, and then they play it out. But that's partly because in something like D&D, you're not controlling the story. You can try and influence it, but you can't actually make everything happen the way a writer can. So the operation of backstory is different. And honestly, a lot of screenwriting teachers, and I don't like to slam other teachers, but I do think that there is a tendency to try and teach character by saying a character is a set of inherited traits and stuff like that, which then explains who they are. A character is a set of actions. A character is a set of behaviors and a set of relationships in the present. And so one of the things that you want to do is try and scrub from your mind this concept that you could say, I know how they grew up and therefore I know who they are. Lots of people grew up like that, but unless that affects how they are behaving in the present or their relationships in the present, that's not actually important. Often, I think writing teachers also try and tell you to create a rich backstory for the character because they hope that it will help you take some time to imagine, which is great. But it's most important to imagine their present, and then you can figure out the backstory from the present. That's the first thing I want to say about backstory. The second, the second is here. I'm going to show you a couple of thumbnails of things. I did a video called Flashbacks, and I suggest you watch it if you're interested in backstory, because obviously flashbacks are a legitimate and vital way to tell backstory. The truth is, if the backstory is enough of a story to relate to the front story, if a backstory is dramatic and emotional enough, why not go to flashbacks? There's nothing wrong with flashbacks. You don't want flashbacks to replace front story, but a good flashback is cool. Also in that video, though, I describe other ways that you can talk about past events, because there are other ways, and if you watch that video, you'll find out. Another video that might be helpful is an early one I did called Exposition, Your New Best Friend, because exposition is another thing that people are scared of doing. They say, I can't do flashbacks, I can't do exposition. Yes, you can. You just do it well. Just do it dramatically. Do it where it involves the present moment, and it will be great. Likewise, on-the-nose dialogue. So this is a topic that I've actually done a lot of really clear and helpful videos about, and I want to steer you to those. So again, flashbacks, exposition, your new best friend, and on-the-nose dialogue. Those are all good lessons on the question of how do you get information in. But I want to also talk some more about this because it's just a great topic. The first and foremost way that we learn about characters is by what they are wanting and what they are doing. And really, if you think about it, that's how we know who they are. If they behave a certain way, if they take certain types of actions, if they view people that they are encountering in the story certain ways, then we know they are an angry person, they are a frightened person, they are a person who is willing to trample others to get what they want. That's the first and main way that we understand character. But then the other ways that we get in character is that very often people do talk about themselves. You don't want it to become I'd like to order that beer because once when I was growing up, I went to Ireland. That doesn't make any sense. But in legitimate conversation, people very often will talk about themselves. Also, is a character trait. Some people do talk about themselves and some people don't talk about themselves. Some people are very guarded about themselves. This is a character trait that becomes very revealing in itself. But the other thing you can do is have other people talk about the character. So it's in dialogue, but it's not like somebody proclaiming who they are. A really cool way that this was used was in Saving Private Ryan. There's a whole question about Ryan's backstory. And in fact, it's a topic between the other soldiers, which becomes itself a story element. So that at the moment when Ryan talks about who he is, it's not just backstory, it's both a revelation, which is really important, but also it's an action taken to serve the needs of the other people in that moment. He tells them for a reason in the present moment. There's great scenes in which some character will analyze the other. And a lot of stuff where somebody's like, you know what your problem is, or you know what I love about you, whatever that stuff is, that's a way to get stuff in about the character. Also, very often, someone will tell a story. In The Godfather, Michael tells a story about Don Corleone and Luca Brasi in the very beginning of the movie, which tells you a great deal about those two other characters, so they don't have to tell. But Michael tells it because of his relationship with Kay in that moment. So there's always a reason for the character to talk, but characters very often talk about each other. So these are some ways that you can get character and backstory into your script without it being blatant or clunky or seeming to stop the story. So it's a great question, and that was a great answer, if I may say so myself. All right, let's talk about the next one. And yes, I see you've got the yes. Sorry, I'm just reading through some comments and stuff. So the next item on our agenda from Maria, who's here, asked about the difference between a spec script and a sample script. And I answered it at the time, but I thought this was a biggie that should really have its own moment here, because a spec script is a speculative script. In other words, you're writing it when no one has paid for it. That is what a spec script is. Very simple. There is work for hire and there is a spec script. Those are the two possible types of scripts. And for a long time, because the movie business was a factory system, there were companies, there were almost no independent films until the 70s. You didn't write a spec script. People got hired to work in the script department of the factory. And they were hired mostly from other fields, journalism, playwriting, fiction writing. And so therefore, the basics, apparently we've got a helicopter. The basic operation of, we got a real helicopter situation. So yes, everything you do for yourselves is in fact a spec script. That is absolutely true. Anything that you write that you have not been paid for in advance is a spec script. So it's going to be basically everything you guys write. The only people who don't write spec scripts are people who are in the industry, who are in the union, who have been hired by a company to write a script by prior agreement. They go to a meeting, they discuss it, they get a contract, and they write the script. Hello, that's Stephen of Cresco Core. Greetings unto you as well. Likewise, Rhett, it's all good. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it is. Yes, welcome to LA. Helicopters galore. Okay, so that's what a spec script is. Basically, any script that you have not been paid for in advance is a spec script. All right, so now let's go to another one from Maria. And this is a biggie. Can you explain the differences between an executive producer, a co-producer, producer, etc.? There are so many types of producer. That only scratches the surface. There is associate producer. There is, I was once a consulting producer. There are tons and tons and tons of producers. And I will tell you the secret. First of all, producing is divided into two parts. There are producers who are producers, and then unfortunately, as a bizarre side effect of the development of television, television writers are also often called producers on shows. And the backstory to that is I'm not sure about the full union negotiations that brought it about. But what happens is if you are a writer on a show, you are a staff employee. And so there is actually, I believe there is a credit staff writer. Then there's story editor. These are hierarchical steps in the writing for television or series employment. And with each one, you get more respect and power and money, but the actual layers, I don't believe are codified. I don't think there may actually be in the Writers Guild in what they call the MBA, which is the basic contract that the Writers Guild has with all companies. They may actually list them. I don't know. But if they do, I can tell you they also have extras, things that they add in. For instance, like I said, I was working on a series. I was not full-time. They did not want to hire me according to any of those ranks. So I was variously called different things, but one of them was consulting producer. So the answer is, if you are watching a series, there is no real way to know if the person whose credit is co-executive producer, whether they are just a fairly high up writer in the staff or whether they're an actual producer who does producing work. Producing work includes sometimes arranging the financial deal which creates a project, but sometimes a producer can be hired on because they are the manager of a major player, the director or a star. Sometimes a person gets a producing credit because they simply give some money. You know, they don't have anything to do with the business at all, but they just gave a bunch of money to become a producer. They get to say they're a producer. In theory, they get money back, and they get to go to the set and to the premiere and stuff. And so that's another type of producer. Very often, that's an executive producer if they've brought in a lot of money, but also sometimes an associate producer. There's a ton of producers, and they could be writers or they could be actual producers. Then there are people who actually produce things, the producers, the real producers. A producer, different types of producers do different jobs, but the essence of producing is getting a project from non-existence to distribution. And there are so many steps involved. There's a thing called a line producer, which is also called a unit manager or production manager. These are all jobs in which they're actually doing things like ordering trucks and signing location agreements and doing the actual producing of the production of the shoot. But there are some producers who will work simply on negotiating the steps by which a script gets through the process of getting all these different executives and companies to agree to put up the millions of dollars that it takes to make something in Hollywood. So there's just a lot of producers. What I would say is, if you're really interested in this, first of all, there's going to be tons of stuff online. There's actually magazines with interviews with producers, for producers. One I think called Produced By. And a good producer is an extraordinary thing. If you get to work with a good producer, your head will explode with joy. Producers are the ones who actually get stuff made. in every way. So there's a thing called the Producers Guild. I'm sure they have a website. I'm sure they talk about a lot of this. And the Writers Guild, the two unions or organizations that supervise those activities. So that's the deal on producing credits. There are an infinite number, and they have no set meaning, but there is often an agreed upon meaning. There are steps when you are on a TV staff, starting with staff writer, story editor, co-executive producer, executive producer, blah, 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 blah. Lots of them. Whew. Okay, so let's see. What do you think of the Blacklist website? Kirby Light asks. That depends on what you mean, viable for new screenwriters. Is it, they are not, there are some places where they are essentially taking your money for their purposes and trying to basically rip off writers. The Blacklist is not like that. The Blacklist is legitimate. They are actually in the business of trying to help people. But will that make things go great for you? No. It's still a massive cluster thing of a lot of people with a lot of input, and whether or not you get votes or not is going to determine your ranking, and that's the Blacklist in that sense. Is it a surefire way? Is quality always recognized? No. Because any of these crowd-sourced, crowd-organized, vote up or down type of organizations in which they judge creative work, that's like any popularity contest. Ooh, do I have that one on here? Wait a second. Let me just check something here. No, I don't. I did a video called Art versus Library versus Contest, or something like that. It's a really good one. It has the word contest in it. I would strongly advise you see that, because the truth is, the concept that popularity will mean that something is successful or that it is good is kind of absurd. Popularity, especially when it comes to websites, is guided by a lot of weird factors which have nothing to do with quality. And also, what the fuck defines quality? What do you mean by quality? Quality and popularity are not the same thing. So the issue with the Blacklist is there's actually two blacklists. There's the blacklist that you can apply for. You pay some money and you put your script up there, and people vote to like it or not like it. You read each other's scripts and you rate them and rank them, and that's a good thing, and it's legitimate. That part of the Blacklist is cool. There's another part. The original official part of the Blacklist was an anonymous voting system among lower level people in the industry, all the assistants and people who were reading scripts every day. And they would read scripts. And this guy named Franklin Leonard said, you know, I read a lot of good scripts that didn't get made for one reason or another, and it frustrates me, and I want to publicize them. So he created the Blacklist, where he asked a lot of other people in the business to rank their top scripts that were not made but were circulating in those offices. And that was what the original Blacklist was, and still is. There is an official Blacklist which comes from people anonymously working in the industry who vote for their favorite unproduced scripts of the year. That is a very powerful thing, but frankly, you're not going to get anywhere near that because you don't have an agent, and without an agent, you don't get into those offices to get read. So there's sort of a outsider Blacklist, which is the one you can get into, and there's the insider Blacklist, which is simply among Hollywood scripts that are already paid for or in the business or being circulated by producers or casting people. That's the big Blacklist. And you're not going to get on that unless you already are in the business enough to be circulated among the Hollywood offices. Whew, lots of talk. Okay, I hope that helped you, Kirby. Greetings from Toronto. Greetings to Toronto, Canada. Hello, Onongo, and I appreciate your messages. Okay. Evoking emotions. This seems like a real magic trick when you're writing your emotions in these scenes. That's a biggie. Wow. I need to think about that. I'm not gonna answer that right now because I wanna mull on how to do that. So I took a little screenshot of that question. I'm gonna move on. I will get to that in a week or two. Hello, Wolf Powers. Greetings from Porto Alegre, south of Brazil. Hey, good to see you. Thank you for coming. Can a writer ask for a producing credit? He's also going to direct the movie. This is a tricky thing. And the answer is it depends. Anything like that is essentially a matter of the power in a negotiation. A writer can certainly ask for a producing credit, but the question is, does he have the power to get that? Because that producing credit is valuable. It's a useful thing for the company, and if they give them away to everybody, then they become less valuable, and also they can't give away too many. You can't have 87 producers. They're just it becomes suspicious. So the answer is, if you're getting a producing credit, the Producers Guild is going to say, well, what are you bringing to the production? What producing are you going to do? If you are also directing, you may be also producing. Depends. They're different jobs. But in this case, if the writer is asking for a producing credit, the question is from who? If the writer is trying to set up a deal in which they are also directing and they want a producing credit, it'll kind of depend on how much the company wants them and how much the company values those things, especially if they are a member of the Producers Guild. Producers Guild has rules about who gets producing credits. And if they are a member of the Producers Guild, they have to obey those rules. The other issue about this is when it comes to any form of credits, they're kind of decided upon project by project, person by person, job by job, with a lot of input from the unions. Or the Producers Guild is not actually a union. The Directors Guild is a union, and the Writers Guild is a union, like in the federally, I believe Producers Guild isn't. But I don't know. I could be wrong about that. But what I do know is that those unions have complete control over a lot of those elements. In other words, they have signed an agreement with all of the companies that work with them to abide by the union's definitions and rules. And therefore, credits get decided partly by that. Like whether or not you get an assistant director or a film buy, those are all things that are actually in the union contracts. But if you're talking about an independent production, something where people are putting together stuff outside of Hollywood, kind of anything goes. The other thing to remember, though, is very often stuff will get changed if an independent project is picked up by a Hollywood distributor. So it's always in flux. There ain't no rules about that. Okie dokie. So, hello. So let us get back to some of the other questions that were already asked in the past. Do you outline for the whole story and for each episode of a web series? This was actually about 2 weeks ago that this came up, and I didn't have time to really delve into this. The brief answer is, I believe you certainly outline the episode you are writing, for sure. I strongly advise you to outline. But do you outline the entire series? For a web series, it's not impossible, but the basic question is, are you going to write the whole series on Spec, which goes back to our original earlier question, what is a spec script? In other words, if you are writing an episode for a web series or creating a web series and you are doing it on your own without being paid for that, then you have to decide how much of a series you want to write, because it's a lot of work to write a whole series. Now, a web series, depending on the length of the episodes, may not be that bad. If you're writing 10-minute episodes, you want to write 6 or 7 of them, cool. If you are writing half-hour or hour episodes of a web series, you're going to have to ask yourself, is it worth it for me to write potentially a lot of pages for a project that may not get picked up? What are you trying to accomplish by doing that? If you're trying to accomplish the pleasure of getting it written, go for it. Most people who are in the business will not write more than the pilot script. Sometimes 1 or 2 episodes. Depends on their enthusiasm and on their on the complexity of the work. When you write, when you create a series, you write the pilot episode, just the first episode, and then you plan roughly the rest of the season and, in theory, the shape of the series. But you do not outline every one of those episodes. That's what the staff is for. That's what the season is for. You spend a lot of time working with a lot of people to work that. You split the work up among them. Very, very rarely will someone write a whole series by themselves. Yes, True Detective. Yes, Downton Abbey. Yes, Fleabag. Those were all limited series in which someone said, I am okay to write 8-hour scripts, 8-hour-long scripts. That's a lot of pages if you're, depends, but it's a lot of work. And some people will say, I don't know if I really want to write all of that if no one's going to read all of that, because very few people in the industry will read a whole series. They read the pilot, they decide whether they want to get involved or not. So the answer is, do you outline a whole web series? I would not make a detailed outline for a whole series unless you're going to write the whole series. Otherwise, write the pilot, outline the pilot, write the pilot. And then, as I will show you in our screenwriting step-by-step as we go along, I am writing a pilot. And then when I'm done with the pilot, I'm going to write a sort of proposal, a pitch document for the rest of the season. And that will give you a sense of what that's like. There are also a bunch of those out there on the internet. You can find people's pitch documents or Bibles for different series that were being proposed. Go on, the search and look for television series pitch documents, television series Bibles. I think you'll find quite a few of them. Okay. Yes, I will tell you this, because this one, I can just tell you, watch my video on this topic. I covered it. It's there. This is a good, useful question. In my screenplay, the serial killer isn't revealed until the end of the script. Should I name him when he shows up in a scene? Yes. This is so important. When you write a character, any character, give them a name and use the same name all the way through. Big pet peeve of mine, but a real problem for beginner scripts is people will write a scene, and if you don't hear the character's name, you meet a character but you don't really know who they are for a while, and so for 2 or 3 scenes it's like the man in the yellow raincoat or something, which I actually did in my first script. Anyway, when you do that, don't do that. Just say, that's Roger. Roger walks into the room. He's wearing a red raincoat. The fact that we don't know his name doesn't really apply. We're not creating a sense of mystery. He is Roger. when you see him on the screen, you're going to say, oh, there's that guy. You don't know his name maybe, but you know that's his identifier. In words, the identifier is a name. If you absolutely want to be a little showy and write something that's kind of annoying, you could write the man with the eye patch if it's something really distinctive. Or you could even call him the mysterious man, but boy, that's annoying. Call them by their name. We as an audience recognize characters immediately by their face, and that is the equivalent on the page of the name. And so therefore, I would say, yes, if you are going to only show him in silhouette or something, I still would name them. Make them a character. They are a character. The person who's playing them is going to play that character. The audience is going to see them as a character. Even if they're just a silhouette, every time that silhouette shows up, they're going to go, oh, there's that character, the silhouette. So, call them by their name right away. Don't do the thing where it's like you say, the mysterious man for like 3 scenes, and then somebody comes in and they say, oh, that's Roger. Oi. Also, it just makes a lot of problems. If you ever do go into production, they now cast 2 actors because you've got 2 separate identifiers in the script. Don't do it. Always name your characters. If they're going to do anything substantial, give them a name. Frankly, if possible, give almost every character, any speaking character, give them a name. Doesn't hurt you. It helps everybody involved, and it really helps the actors who get to put on their resume, I played Filbert instead of I played desk clerk. Just really, really helps them. That's okay. The fact that we don't see his face, I would say Roger walks into the room, we don't see his face. Or if you want to, just call him the killer. Unless that's not clear that he is a killer. But if you're not showing his face and you're showing him kill people, he's the killer as far as I can tell. And Castor, I don't know the exact situation, but either give him a non-name name like the killer or the man with the tattoo, or more easily, just give him a name. You don't have to tell us a lot about him. You could say, Roger walks in. We don't see his face, but he is tall and wears leather clothing. Whatever it is. Is this making sense? Is this helping at all? That's okay. All right. Yes, when we say outline the whole series, it's a relative term. Well, no, not necessarily. That's what I was getting into. If you are only writing the pilot and then you are going to write a summary document, a pitch document, a Bible of the rest of the series, then yes, outline is a very relative term. But I'm saying there are times when people will actually want to write the entire limited series, in which case they should outline the entire limited series. That was my point. If you are simply writing a pilot with an attached document that summarizes the rest, you don't want to or need to fully outline the rest. But you do need to plot out or sketch out the major story events, and that's the beginning of an outline. Okay. Well, if you're giving away the big twist, that's different. In other words, and please tell me, if this character is also seen in other scenes as themselves, then you definitely want to give them 2 names. You want to say the killer when they are headless, when they are not seeing their face, and then call them Roger when they're in the scene not killing people. Like if we see that can happen sometimes, you'll see a character who is doing something behind, something nefarious or good, frankly, anonymously, and they want to keep their anonymous nature, and you want to you respect that for a while too. Cool, you can do that. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay. Sir, no need to call me sir. We're all friends here. Is it okay to present many ideas in one script and one story? I mean, like religion, Martial rape or marital? Different. Um, Child abuse, women's rights study. Is it okay? Depends. If you can present those ideas in some meaningful way to the story, yeah, it's okay. If you're just throwing them in willy-nilly and they're not really making sense to the other events, then probably not okay. The answer is you can present as many ideas as you can coherently get into the story. Now, some stories are created, or some films are created in order to take on a bunch of topics. That can be some fairly sophisticated writing, but it's certainly doable. I will try and think about that, but I do believe that that's entirely doable. The question is, there isn't a rule like, only one idea per script. However, there traditionally, usually, is one central idea. Now, the central idea may be, as in Voltaire's Candide, this character is going to run through a bunch of different elements of society, in which case they may have many, many experiences. Actually, hang on a second. I'm going to give you a recommendation here. Oh. If you want to see a really interesting movie from the 70s called Oh, Lucky Man, it's a fascinating movie about a young man's journey through life, in which he experiences a lot of different situations and problems. And the whole point is that he is going through many, many phases of life and parts of society. So I just, oh, look at it. It's weird. It's wacky. It's also really cool because it's also a musical, but it's not a musical in the sense that the people sing. Among the people that he meets is a rock band. And so the rock band is playing songs, but they also just play songs that the film is showing you that he doesn't see, that are commenting on the situations. It's frankly, I think, a brilliant movie. Some people might not like it. I easily could not like it, but very few people know about it, and it's just phenomenal. Oh, Lucky Man. Lindsay Anderson directed it. Malcolm McDowell did it after Clockwork Orange. It's just a really cool movie. Anyway, look at that. I just gave you a great idea. That means I get credit, right? Okay. Okay, another one. Hi, Morgan Howard. Audiences love characters they have never seen before. So why do writers get pushback on characters not fitting a certain characteristics of a gender, profession, sexual orientation, race, age, or etc.? This is a good question with an obvious answer. The business is screwed up often. And that is because any business that is trying to control an art is going to get into a conflict between the needs of business and the needs of art. Also, the needs of people who are not artists, supervising people who are artists, that's usually a tough one. There is a small group of people who understand and respect artists without being them, and they make the greatest producers and studio executives and whatnot. They're a small percentage. Most of the people who are in the business of making shows and movies are caught in a weird conflict because they don't really know what it's like to be fully creative. Everybody's got some creativity in them, and it's one of the difficult things is you get kind of part-timers, amateurs, who are like, oh, I was creative, I thought of this, and then they don't understand the full mechanics and consequences of some of their creativity. And plus, let's not forget, the creative arts industry lures a lot of people with emotional problems. Just don't kid yourself. I mean, any part of the world, there's a lot of people with emotional problems, but the arts and the glamour of the entertainment industry draws more than their share, and bad behavior or bizarre behavior is rewarded more than it would be at like IBM, or at least the old IBM back when it was sort of square. So the answer is, why do they get pushback? Because things are screwed up. Because it is not a perfect world, and artists don't get to just do what they want. And also, artists are often screwed up. Artists are way often screwed up, and often they make bad choices. So it's tough. The people who are supervising the arts, they want rules. They want evidence. They want to say, this worked before, therefore it should work again. Of course, that is contrary to the actual experience of art. But it is what you need when you're doing the art business, because otherwise you're just admitting how much you are gambling. They are gambling no matter what, but how much they're gambling, nobody wants to admit. So they keep saying, oh, here's the formula. If you have character X do this thing at time, then audiences will love it. And to a certain extent, don't forget, audiences do like the familiar. Audiences do like cliches very often. Audiences do respond to the same tricks over and over. We all do. There's a little kid inside of us who wants to see the same trick played in new outfits. That's part of the game. So, honestly, I wouldn't spend a lot of time fretting about the problems of people in the business being dumb, because that's the business. People in every business, a lot of them are dumb, and they don't get what they're doing, and that's just the way it is. My IP deals with lots of... this is a good question. Do you mean your IP and it was your story, like your original idea, or are you actually working with some IP, somebody else's intellectual property? IP, by the way, IP is intellectual property. Deals with lots of action and fighting. As I write these sequences, it reads very awkwardly. Thoughts on how to write compelling action. This is another Rhett, you are asking the biggies. This is actually one that I would advise, reading as many scripts as you can. Any script that has a lot of action in it, especially the ones you like, go online, search PDF of that title and see if you can find the script and see how it was described. Because there are so many different ways to do it, and it's really, really tricky. There is not a single way. I will come back to you on that, because I'm going to need to dig up some samples to show. How do you get into these different types of guilds, like the Writers Guild? First of all, Writers Guild East and West are not the same. They are actually two separate unions that work together. This could become a trouble down the line, as they are dealing with different things. But the answer is, for any guild, union, group, club that has a website, there will be a section of that website that will tell you exactly what it takes to get in. They're all different. The Screen Actors Guild has certain requirements. You have to be in certain number of projects that are guild projects. The Writers Guild, likewise, you have to be hired by someone who is making a project, and there's a lot of rules. I don't know what they are. So go to those websites and look it up. I am so glad. That's great. My IP. Excellent. This is a biggie. Don't use other people's IP. Just try not to do it. Don't even try to. Don't do it. Do not do this. Do not say, ooh, I read this book or this, graphic novel or whatever, and I really loved it, so I'm going to write a script to it. Don't do that. You don't have the right to do that. You can't do it. Nothing good can come of it unless you are literally just doing it as practice. In which case, cool, do it. But recognize that you can't show it to other people professionally. As far as Rhett, your IP, your action, that's a biggie. That's a good one. I will try and get to it soon. I'll definitely get to it, but I'll try and get to it soon. Okay, Riley Sleeper. Fascinating name. Hi, welcome. First time commenting, but I'm writing a story with an unlikable protagonist. He starts in a pretty dark place and eventually descends further into a more violent nature to protect those he loves. Any thoughts on unlikable protagonists? Truthfully, we are in an era when unlikable protagonists are more acceptable than they have ever been. um, so one thing I would say is, just check the vibe currently. For a good period of time after The Sopranos hit in 1999, the unlikable, the dark protagonist became required when it came to series. Now that's, thank goodness, become less of a requirement and more of a choice. But unlikable protagonist, this is really interesting because the question of likability, I believe we can like anybody. That I believe that the most important question is, do we understand and care about what they want? I'm going to just mention this. Okay. I believe that this is more important, or this is the cause of likability. Likability, and yeah, there's a dividing line. In the business, people often say likable when what they mean is either like me or they mean something that is conventional and familiar and acceptable to the mainstream. And they call that likable. For me and for many other people, that's unlikable. If I see one more suburban high school story, my head will blow up. I don't find that likable. I find it unimaginative, unless you're doing something imaginative with that. So let's first sort that out. If somebody's saying it's unlikable because they don't like that type of person, you're screwed. Just ignore that advice. If you are saying they are unlikable because they do things that are repellent or repugnant or immoral or awful, then the question is there within that a likable or understandable source, emotional source for it? I'm gonna give you a couple of things. This is a remarkable piece of work. It is dated now. The original movie, black and white, In Cold Blood, based on the nonfiction novel by Truman Capote. It's written and directed by a man named Richard Brooks. It is a mostly accurate depiction of a set of what were considered senseless murders. These two guys got together, and frankly, a lot of the movie is about how they worked each other up into a frenzy in which this murder happened. But In Cold Blood is a really great example of feeling empathy for or understanding of people who do something horrible. But obviously, also, let me just run it some more. Sorry, not done with that. Joker and Taxi Driver are both examples where we are both compelled and brought inside the suffering and disturbance of the character who is seemingly unlikable. Also, The Machinist. I'm just gonna do a little. Oh. Oh, really? Okay, well, you get the idea. There we go. These are three very powerful movies. People like them, people hate them. One of the big problems with movies about unlikable protagonists is the people who like them give them a bad name. That the intention of the filmmaker, the people who are creating this story in which they are trying to give an analysis of a person who does a terrible thing, or just a annoying, grouchy, terrible person. Also, yeah, there's another one. This is actually a really cool one that you probably don't know about. Falling Down. It's a fascinating movie. It's this weird blend of thriller and comedy, social comedy, and emotional breakdown. There's so many unlikable protagonists, and the question is there, first of all, what is your understanding of why they are like that? And if they are, if what you're saying is this is caused by something, or this could be prevented by something, that's a part of the story, and that's something that you want to do. But you can say, do you think this person's unlikable? But they're trying, they're doing their best. I mean, Walter White in Breaking Bad is frankly unlikable a lot of the time. Anyway, I hope this is helping. Cool. Yeah. Okay, cool, good. I hope that helps. It's a complex thing. What I would get at is, Shakespeare's tragedies are very often about unlikable people. That doesn't mean, and there are people who are doing bad things. Macbeth is doing some bad shit. It doesn't matter. We understand the grip of the problem that he is in, and we feel, that cathartic sense of both understanding and yet horror at what they are doing. That's the purpose of some art. That's not a bad thing. The business got very scared of depicting dark things for a long time, and then because they're very afraid of copycats, and also just being afraid of being criticized for being unpleasant. Then in the 60s and 70s, they went way off the deep end on the other side, and everything was kind of horrifying and bad and unpleasant. Also, wait, okay, I'm just, you got me. There's a movie called Coming Home. There's a lot of movies called Coming Home, but one of them is directed by Hal Ashby. It stars Jane Fonda, Jon Voight, and Bruce Dern. And the character that Bruce Dern plays is really unlikable and heart-wrenching, marvelous. This is, by the way, a magnificent, underrated, not underrated by the people who have seen it, but most people haven't seen it. It's just a freaking great movie. And if you want to see character work like you've never seen before, I cannot recommend it enough. I have been going on a long time here, so I'm going to be stopping soon. Yeah, cool. I would definitely say look at all the good ones that you like that you can get a script for. Okay. I'm going to have to start just grabbing things up and answering them another time because we've gone over an hour, and how far can I go? Yes, The Road. I don't know if they're unlikable. That's The Road is a story of people in an unlikable situation, but I kind of think he's likable. I don't know. Yeah, Dexter's kind of cheating because they make him really likable. I mean, he's so likable, and they sort of take the edge off what he's doing because he's killing other bad people, although things get complicated as it goes on. Anyway. Okay, folks, Badlands. Damn, yes. Badlands is another, boy, you guys, if you can watch Badlands, watch it. It is freaking amazing. Yes, Badlands is really interesting because he does very little to analyze the character. He does very little to try and get behind the blue eyes. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Yeah. Okay, guys. Right. Oh, this is a really good point, actually. Okay. Archie Bunker was supposed to be unlikable, but he was also really easy for lots of people living in a changing world to relate to. This is really, really true. Archie Bunker is tricky because he is supposed to be unlikable. And once again, one of the worst things about writing a character about whom you feel they are supposed to be unlikable but interesting in some way is the people who like them in the audience. And this will happen. And that is something to reckon with. I don't think you should not do it. I think just do recognize that people will blame you for the people who like your character who you didn't want them to like. It's going to happen. All right. Oh yes. Oh yeah, man. Once you get into Game of Thrones, you got tons of unlikable characters. I would also mention, by the way, White Lotus, recent HBO story, which really it starts. The characters are just so unlikable, and by the end, a few of them things have gotten morally and emotionally complex in a beautiful way. Mike White, great writer director, also did an amazing indie film called Chuck and Buck. I'm going to stop. Stop me before I talk again. I'm going to go. It's been a pleasure. I will try to answer the ones I didn't answer at another time. Ciao.